3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh, we're live! Hello! I didn't see you there. Welcome everyone to Spinning the Yarn with Taylor Navarro. In case you couldn't guess, my name is Taylor Navarro. I use she, her pronouns. I am a tanned Latina woman with wavy brown hair, a red and black checkered flannel, black tank top, black glasses, and today the crochet piece that I'm wearing. Ooh, is this lovely like little rainbow bandana thing that I made with like a little like multicolored blue rose on it and like a pink scallop trim. It looks very good. I made this for my daughter. I ran out of my own crochet pieces to wear, and so I was quickly upstairs raiding her drawers trying to find something that I had made, and it was either this or a bluey striped dress, and I couldn't fit into the dress, so this is what we've got going on with us today. But yes, we are here for spinning the yarn. For those of you who might be new here, spinning the yarn is an idiom which is basically like telling a story, weaving a tale together. And this is our TTRPG crafty chat show here on Euphoria. And we are in the final episode of season 1. Oh my goodness, where has the time gone? Uh, I'm gonna just spoil it up top because it's my show and I can do what I want. We've been greenlit for a season 2, so if you want to know when that's airing, make sure you're following Euphoria on the socials down below. And I guess without further ado, I'm gonna yell, Darcy, hit the button! And I've got a wonderful guest with me here today. Michelle, why don't you introduce yourself for the audience?
Hello, Taylor Navarro. I'm Michelle Kelly. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a brown skinned woman with long, straight black hair, and I'm wearing a crocheted jumper with a kind of multicolory rainbow thing going on that I
Pretty.
made myself. And you can tell it's
Whoa!
my first attempt because I didn't buy enough yarn, so I didn't know what I was doing. So the sleeves are from a different dye batch and they don't match. It's an imperfect creation, but so am I. We're going with it.
Wow, okay. I guess we're diving straight in with the philosophy of the episode. No, it looks absolutely gorgeous.
Thank
And
you. I love
I
it.
do just want to tell the chat we did not coordinate our outfits before the show. We just showed up like this.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm gonna start, Michelle, with the question I always start with. What you making?
Okay, so I am making something a little bit more miniature than this big jumper, which took me so long. And I lost patience. So I was like, I'm going to make some small things so that I can remember that it's fun to make little things. So I'm
Mhm.
making some little hanging plant crochet friends. So I've
Oh
got a
wow!
little basket made already, and then
Oh my gosh!
these little like fronds to be
These
a
are
string of
so
pearls.
cute.
Right? So currently what I'm making is like it's just gonna be a ball that I'm gonna stuff with yarn scraps and that'll be the soil. So I'll sew all those little
Oh.
leaves into it and then that will sit in the basket.
Oh, that's sick. That's
And
so
I'm making a
cool.
couple of those. I'm having fun. There's one that's gonna be like a fern leaf one. And then this one, where is he? He's like a little succulent.
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
having a lot of fun with it. I should shout out the pattern is from someone called Squibbles Crochet Corner.
Ooh,
Squibble Squibble Crochet Corner.
the
She made the
cutest way to
pattern.
spell a
So
name. Yep.
yeah.
Oh my
so
gosh.
yeah, that's what I am currently making. Um
Nice. I should probably say what I'm attempting to make.
yeah.
So I have this book that I was given from Mother's Day many, many moons ago called Cuddly Animals. It's by Lucia Forthman. Yeah. And I am making Charlie the turtle.
So
Um,
cute.
at the moment, I'm working on the hexagons. So if I go really quiet because I'm counting, I've messed it up already, and I'm only 3 rows in. And should I have stuck with this project for a stream? No. Did I have time to grab any other project? No. So actually, that brings me on to my second question. Michelle, when you're working on like your crochet projects, because you do crochet, do you have multiple projects on the go at any one time, or are you just like one and I work on this until it's done?
I usually try to have one at a time because I used to have lots and none of them ever got done. So
I'm being
yeah,
called out
like
immediately.
tag
Cut the
yourself.
stream, cut the stream. We're done. We finished here.
So I kind of tried to like focus on getting one done at a time. These plants are actually one that I left and came back to because I started them in like last year before Christmas, and then I wanted to make gifts for people for Christmas, so I had to put them aside to like focus on that
Mm.
and like get them
Mhm.
done in time. So I'm just like revisiting it now because I left the least exciting bit, the soil part, to last.
Mm,
Of course, I did all the cute little leaves, which take
of course.
loads of concentration, and I would never have been able to do on stream. But now I'm just doing circles, so much easier. But yeah, I think like again, this jumper I made last year, and it took most of the year, and I was like, I'm not doing anything else until I finish it. And it was by far, it's the only garment I've made that's not like a scarf. So it was by
Oh,
far the most
wow.
complicated thing I've made, which is why I'm going back to making little cute mini things that I
I
can
love
make
that.
in fewer sessions.
I love that. I love that. So when did you start like crocheting in the grand timeline of Michelle? Where does crochet enter the chat?
So I used to live in an absolutely tiny little studio flat in Sheffield. And Sheffield, if you don't know, is like very hilly. And there was a winter where we had like really horrific snow, and my tiny studio flat was at the top of this big hill, and I couldn't leave. Like, you couldn't drive, you couldn't even walk because it was too slippy going either way with all the snow and ice. So I was stuck indoors, and it just so happened that like a week before, my friend had like showed me, like, she was crocheting, and I was like, oh, show me how you do that. And she'd showed me like a couple of simple stitches, and she'd lent me a ball of like leftover blue yarn she had, and lent me a crochet hook to practice. So I spent
Mhm.
a week when I was snowed in to my tiny flat with nothing to do, looking at YouTube tutorials of how to make snowflakes and just making tiny blue snowflakes and putting them up all over my flat to keep me entertained.
You started with snowflakes.
Yeah,
Arguably one of the most difficult things to start with.
I didn't realize this. I didn't know any better. I was like, what's something small that I can find on YouTube? And I found lots of tutorials of snowflakes. And I was like, okay, this will teach me how to do all the different stitches because it will be like, do a round of this stitch and then do some of these. I didn't know I was picking something difficult to start off with.
Hey,
I just
Michelle,
thought crochet was difficult.
quick question. Is this gonna be thematic at all of you starting with something really, really difficult as I ask you more questions about your TTRPG career?
Me making things difficult for myself because I'm overly ambitious. How dare you call me out like this?
From the get-go?
Yeah.
I just ask you, I'm priming the audience.
It's like you've met me or something. How dare you?
You know, we will get to us meeting because it will be relevant in the grand timeline of Michelle, which is what I'm dubbing it now.
I love
Um,
this. I've always wanted a
but
grand timeline.
you've got a grand timeline, a sacred timeline, if you will. Um, but okay, so right, so crochet is somewhat recent then
Yeah.
in terms of like your life.
Mhm.
Um, so what about TTRPGs? Where do they come in on the grand timeline?
Ooh, we're on the grand timeline. Definitely before crochet. I think I was probably about 21, 22. So that was about 10 years ago, maybe slightly more. Um, that I first started playing TTRPGs, and it was actually actual play that got me into it. I was
You
listening
started with
to
actual play
I was
or
listening to actual play podcasts before I'd ever actually tried
Oh,
playing a game. Um, and like I knew some friends who played like D&D and stuff at uni. So I was like, "Oh, can I have a go at playing with you?" And it turns out I don't really enjoy D&D. So sorry.
it's
But
okay, I accept your apology.
no, sorry D&D if you're listening. If you've become a sentient being and are listening. Um but that kind of led me to exploring other like kinds of game systems and stuff. But yeah, it
Nice.
was I was listening to actual play podcasts before I ever actually tried playing a game myself.
What podcast were you listening to?
So I think probably the first one was The Adventure Zone, which was the kind of comedy D&D one that the McElroy brothers did way back in the day. And I'm given to understand by those who like D&D that it's not a very good way to teach you to actually play the game.
Mm.
But it kind of like introduced me to the idea that like it could be fun and silly and it wasn't all maths and like being very serious all the time, which was my preconception of what TTRPGs were.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I got that, and then I looked on like I think it was like a discussion forum, probably Reddit or something, for like people who listened to that show, and there was a thread of like, what other like D&D podcasts do you listen to? And I found a few different ones. I'm trying to remember what ones I listened to. I definitely listened to Dungeons and Daddies at one point. Um, there was one which is I think it's, like, not very well known, but I got really into it, called The Magpies, which was a Blades in the Dark actual play that went on for 4 seasons,
Ooh.
and that got me into my absolute favorite system, Blades in the Dark. So I'm very grateful to them. And yeah,
Oh, you like Blades in the Dark? If only you were running it as, like, an actual play on a channel where you could watch the VODs or something.
if only there was a 4-episode miniseries that you could watch right after this stream, not right now,
You
of
know
me
what?
running Blades in the Dark.
I love our producer
Did you
who
just
just put
hit
it
the
in the
Nightbot?
chat.
Nightbot, you're so on it.
So yeah, hey, if you also like Blades in the Dark and actual plays and Michelle and or Euphoria, any combination of those, you should go check out the Euphoria YouTube, where we've got a 4 episode miniseries, GM'd by Michelle of Blades in the Dark.
It's my absolute favorite system. I love it very much. And I kind of discovered playing that in lockdown times.
Mhm, mhm,
When I
mhm.
sort of to keep in touch with sort of friends who I wasn't seeing, I was like, I'll run this game that I've only heard in podcast form and never actually played. I'll try GMing it, and it turned into a 2-year campaign. So I love
Whoa!
it that much that I just couldn't let go of it. So
That's great. That's great. So when did actual play come into it then?
I'm trying to think like when I actually started performing like on streams and stuff myself. I started off doing a couple of charity streams
Mhm.
here and there. I met Ida when she was at Roll for Good, and I appeared on one of their streams many moons ago. Um, and I met Darcy doing Darcy. I can see you pointing at yourself, Jack. Yes. I know, I got distracted by you going like this at yourself on the
Hang
screen
on,
only
the
we can
audience
see.
can't see our wonderful, magnificent producer Darcy.
We need
Um,
producer cam so you can see Darcy like silently heckling us as we talk. It's very good. It's good content. Yes, it was a game which Darcy GM'd of Orbital Blues, I think it was. So yeah, so it was written in the stars that we'd all end up on a channel together, I guess. But yeah, I started off doing charity streams, and then as I got more confident and got to know more people, they kept foolishly inviting me to be on more and more streams, and now I love it and I do it as much as I
that's very relatable.
can.
Absolutely fantastic. So you do actual play. This is I've lost count of my stitches. Hang on. Hang on. Everyone hold. Pause the stream. Okay.
We talked about this before the stream started, but I got this project to a point where I can just go in circles and use a stitch marker specifically so I didn't have to count. And I love that Taylor is like, I can interview somebody and count. I'm just
I
that powerful. I
I
support it.
can. I've
I
just
support the hubris.
I've done it. I've lit all I have to
Hooray!
do is I do 1, 2, 3, 4 increase, and that's it. Like,
That's it.
that's what I'm doing right now. Okay, so actual play, crochet, but you do more because you are also a game designer now.
I guess. Yeah, that
You
happened. That happened
designed
by
like
mistake.
5, 6 games?
5, yeah.
5. So do you want to tell us a little bit about the games that you've designed very recently in the sacred timeline of Michelle?
Sure, yeah, this was just like last month really. I had a couple of like when I'm writing, I feel like the actual sitting down and writing something down is a very,
Mhm.
very quick process because most of my writing happens in my noggin over a long period of time. So I had like these little thoughts for like tiny, tiny little snapshot games you could play that should take like less than 10 minutes. Like, what kind of little interactions and moments could you have playing a super simple little RPG? Um, where you just, almost like playing out a scene in an actual play rather than playing the whole game.
Mhm.
Um, and from there, I kind of came up with a few different concepts. I wrote one up and I put it on. I was about to say Twitter, Blue Sky. It's the what's the new Twitter, the butterfly
Yeah,
Twitter.
the
I
butterfly
put it
glitter.
on there, and people were really lovely about it and said that they liked it a lot. So I was like, okay, I'll write up the rest of the ideas I have, and I laid them out into a little A4 zine that you can print off and fold up into a little booklet if you wanted to, of just 5 little teeny tiny little games for 2 people to take a few moments to have an interaction together and just
Mhm.
kind of explore where that goes. Um, I'm really intrigued by, kind of the concept of people buying TTRPG books, maybe not even intending to ever play or not knowing it'll ever get to play, but just because they love reading the
Mhm.
rules and love imagining the worlds that they could create in those spaces. And I was like, what if I could create something that's like a tiny little thing that you could read and imagine a world, but also it's so mini and teeny, it's so much easier to actually get a chance to try it. You could just grab someone and be like, let's have a go at this thing. That was kind of what I was trying to do, among other things. So yeah, that's on itch now. You can probably find it if you search hard enough. It's called Duet. And my itch name is Michelle Helicopter, which is the same as all my socials. And I just figured out how to do community copies on
Oh,
itch.
fab!
I just figured that out. I was like, I can't find the button. Where's the button? I had to Google it.
Itch is
Um,
really difficult. I struggle with itch personally.
yeah,
Oh,
you
hey,
have to
look,
be.
it's the link has just appeared in the chat as if by magic.
Oh wow! The
Thank
magical
you, magical
unseen
chat.
unseen chat fairy has posted it. Thank you. I put it on there for a pound because I feel like I always yell at other people to value your art. So I put it up there for a pound, but also money isn't the only kind of value that matters. So I've also now put community copies on now that I've figured out how. So if you want to just
Right.
download it and read it, please do. It will bring me joy to know that people have read it.
I love that. And I'm gonna move on. I'm asking about all of these different things, and they might seem unrelated, but they are related for two reasons. One, because you made them and I'm interviewing you, and it's relevant
That
to
is
the
a connection.
conversation.
I am a common thread in all of these
You're
questions. Is
you're a
true.
common thread in all of these questions, believe it or not. But also, uh, it's all art. It's all
It's all
different
art,
styles of
baby.
art. And so moving away from like the explicitly creative side,
Mm,
you've joined the staff here at Euphoria. Congratulations.
thank you.
Um, when it comes to programming actual play, when it comes to like preparing and all of that kind of stuff, would you consider what you're doing to be like an art form in any way?
On the
Even though you're
production
not
side.
yeah, on the production side, on the back end, you're not actually creating the content that is going to be consumed,
Mhm.
but you are shaping it. You're kind of setting out the tools. And would you consider that to be an art form?
I think that it certainly is. It's at the very least, it's contributing to the creation of a piece of art. Whether
Mm,
I would say production is in and of itself an art form, I don't know. But I would say that in much the same way as my professional life, I'm an actor, and a play doesn't just happen because of someone writing the script and some actors saying the lines. There's lighting design. There's sound tech going on. There's stage managers, there's people at the front desk selling tickets and showing you to your seats, and all of those things are necessary for the play to exist. And from the person who's hoovering up the carpets at the end of the night to the person who's like directing the rehearsals, all of those things are needed for a play to exist. And I think in the same way, actual plays are tiny little semi improvised plays or very improvised plays depending on who's running them. And in the same way, I think that the production side of things in our little TTRPG theater is necessary for the creation of those pieces of art. Definitely.
I love that. So when you're doing anything, whether it's she's lost count again. Hang on.
She's
Let
done
me
it.
finish. Let me get my question out. So when you're doing anything, whether it is like crochet, actual play, game design, like actual play scheduling and production, you do everything with an like intent to make something beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you like? So when you're thinking about these things, what kind of common threads do you notice in the way that you operate when it comes to like fiber arts versus like performing arts versus improvised TTRPG arts? Question mark.
um that's what a deep philosophical question, Taylor. You were lowballing me. She was loving me the easy ones with like, hey, what's your name? Now let's get serious. I love it.
I've been doing this to everyone. Took literally hit Darcy out of left field on the very first show, but these were the questions. These are the questions that are in my mind when I'm thinking about like TTRPGs. What the way I personally do it is a lot of the stuff I make is either silly for fun
Mhm,
or it is an incredibly intensely thought out art piece.
mhm.
And there is no in between. It's either throwaway or like with a specific intention in mind to be regarded as art. And so I am so curious about how other people approach this because if I can get you to acknowledge that these different areas are art, then what is the through line that you notice about your own work?
It's a good question. I think that for me, the the fundamental thing that I'm trying to do with any artistic pursuit is to make somebody else feel something. And maybe
Mhm,
not even make is the right word, but lead somebody or create an environment where somebody else feels something.
mhm,
Um, some kind of curated experience. And that might be like showing, look, I made this little hanging plant. And then people go, oh, so cute. They felt something. They felt charmed by it. They felt delighted. They felt, I want to try making that. They felt something.
mhm,
Or whether that's like, um, a four-part actual play miniseries where there's dramatic moments and there's shocking moments, but there's also funny, silly moments. All of those are building an environment, a creative environment where your audience can feel something. And I think that that is the connective tissue of my art. Is that I don't think that I necessarily create silly throwaway things which aren't art. If I'm being silly, that is also part of my artistic practice, because if I'm making you laugh and feel goofy and silly with me, then I'm making you feel something. um I spent today working at a museum near me, where there's like a sort of constructed Victorian street, and I've been playing a lady who works on the street, and I tell literature which is time appropriate to Victorian people. I tell the stories to the kids on the street, and it's really cute and silly and fun, and I make a lot of jokes, and it's not like a history lesson. It's not super intellectual. It's not
mhm,
dramatic. It's not going to make you cry when I like recap the story of the elves and the shoemaker to some kids and get them to act out the sound of the bell going over the door as the elves come into the shop, right? But it's making the kids have fun, and
mhm,
it's hopefully making the parents think, how cute are my kids, and also thank god someone's entertaining my kids for a second.
mm.
And as far as I'm concerned, like, that's as much art as writing a book or crocheting a little plant, or performing in a scripted out play in front of an auditorium of people. It's all creation, and it's all hopefully like having some kind of emotional response from the person experiencing
That is amazing and beautiful, and I absolutely love that. She's going over to her question document. Everyone stay calm.
it.
Um, so we know you do crochet. Do you like do crochet whilst you're playing TTRPGs?
I actually don't. Um, for me, like, I think
Controversial.
most of the kind of fiber art people that I know do like to do it kind of while doing something else. For me, it's actually something that I usually, right now, even this, having a full-on conversation while doing it is unusual for me, because a
Oh.
lot of the time when I'm crocheting, I actually find it quite meditative to focus on it.
Mm.
And it's one of the few times I'm not doing 10 things at once in my life. So I might have a podcast on or the TV on in the background to listen to while I'm crocheting, but it will usually be something I've listened to or watched before, so that it's just I can tune out and really tune in to what I'm doing and be kind of
Mhm.
mindful with it. Um, and same with TTRPGs. When I'm playing games, I like to try just here, and I might be fiddling with something like twiddling. I'm often twiddling a pencil. If it's a wide shot on an actual play stream, you'll see that I'm always twiddling a pencil or accidentally dropping dice because I'm fiddling. But not doing anything as focused as crochet while I'm playing, because it helps me to be more clocked in if I'm looking at the people who are talking. But I
That's
find it
fair.
really
Everyone is
interesting.
different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I find it really interesting that, like, obviously a lot of people definitely find it easier to be clocked in if they're doing something like crocheting.
Mhm.
Um, and it's just personal preference, isn't it? And like the way your personal brain works.
Yeah. No, that is absolutely fair. I will crochet during my home game, but if I'm like on stream, the only difference between how I play at home and how I play on stream is I won't have anything I'll be fiddling with like dice and like doodling, but
Hmm.
I won't be like crocheting because you gotta look up at the camera. I
You gotta
refuse to
look
make
here.
eye contact at my camera and it upsets everyone. But I don't I have to look at the faces on the screen because I need to see like the emotional reactions of what everyone else is doing. But
Hmm.
that's just me.
Yeah, no, I tend to move the window as close up to the top of my screen as possible to give the illusion I'm looking into the camera, because generally I am not,
That's
unless I'm trying to kind of make a really like focused point, and I want the audience to really capture clock into a moment. I will look straight down the barrel to get that moment of eye contact. But yeah, I am the same. I'm not usually looking directly into the camera even when I'm on stream, because
fair
I don't
enough.
want to look at that thing. I don't want to look at that eye. I want to look at the people I'm talking to.
Yeah, I get that. I fully get that. Nice. So, between home games and actual play
Mm.
performances, uh, have any of your TTRPG characters ever like crafted, like whether it's like an artificer or whether it's like I'm
Mm.
playing a granny and while we're doing this thing, the granny is knitting. Like, do you ever have you ever had any characters that craft? And if so, like what system? What did they make?
That's such an interesting question. I certainly have had characters who are creative people. I've had characters who draw, possibly a sort of wish fulfillment fantasy, because it's never anything that I've put time and effort into, so I can't draw
Mhm.
for. Can we swear? Sure, we can. I can't draw for shit because I have never made
Same,
the
bro.
effort to learn. Um, but I also like to. I've played a lot of characters who are bard type people, even if they're not like a bard class. They kind of fall into that
Mhm.
archetype. They like to sing. They like to perform. They like to tell jokes. They like to write. I wonder why on earth I create characters who are like that. Um,
I couldn't tell you, fam.
But no, I don't think I ever have had a character who does something like knitting or crochet. Perhaps I ought to, because I think that there's so much you can learn from a person, not just from like, not particularly from the art form they choose, but from what they choose to create within that art form. I find it so
Mm.
fascinating. Um, I feel like the little turtle blanket is so sweet and lovely. And I have made little toy turtles. And I have made a blanket, but I never made a turtle blanket. And the fact that Taylor makes a turtle blanket tells me something about Taylor that I find very lovely.
Well, like it makes sense because like so I think I'm about to tell a story that I know this is your interview, but I'm gonna completely derail this for just 2 seconds because I think that you and Darcy are gonna really enjoy this story.
Please, I've
Um,
been talking too long. Let's hear from
okay.
Taylor.
So when my daughter was born, she was given like this like Disney Dumbo toy. And it's like Dumbo's head and torso, and it's holding a blanket and it's stitched onto the blanket so you don't see the rest of Dumbo. And she loved this thing so much, and she had two of them, a blue one and a grey one. Um, and we lost the blue one in France, and then she was like 2 years old. We're in the park with the river in Canterbury. Uh, and she threw her dummy out of the pram, and I was like, "Don't throw things out of the pram because we're close to the river. It'll fall in the river." And she looks at me, and she throws Dumbo into the river. This thing that she can't sleep without. Now, we were on a play date with a mom at the time. This is the wife of my husband's best friend at work, and their daughter, who was like a year older. And I look at Olivia and I look at Dumbo sailing down the river, and I say to the mom, "I will be right back." And I start running. And I run out of the park, across the road, and down to the steps into the river on the other side, wade halfway through the river, and catch this thing before it gets there. Now I get out and I meet them back in the
Oh
park.
yeah,
I
you
am
do.
soaked from the belly button down, right? Luckily, I remembered to take my phone out my pants. Um, and TLDR, they had to leave immediately. I have seen them since. That didn't curse me with them forever, but um, but I did have to call my friend, who, ironically enough, whose name is River, um, and ask him to meet me on the way to work because he worked on the high street, so he could watch Olivia while I went into a charity shop and bought new pants and changed into said pants. Um, but also I knew if I didn't do that one thing, that my daughter was never gonna sleep over again. We did buy a backup Dumbo after this incident, just in case something did happen to the OG, and now it's been like 6 years, I can't tell them apart. Um, but like this little thing, this like little lovey, like my son has one. It's like a full dragon, like a tiny dragon, but like a full one that again is holding a blanket. And that's such a wonderful like little thing to give like a baby. And I
Mhm,
understand that like this baby is not going to receive it when it's first born because it shouldn't have a toy like this, but like as it kind of gets older, it needs something soft.
mhm.
Um, I hope that this is something that it will latch onto and hopefully not throw in a river. But like fingers crossed, if I could just have one wish, because I'm putting in a lot of time and effort into this. And if it loves it, hopefully it's not gonna yeet it into a river. But
The
so
possibility is not zero,
the
but
possibility is
we hope.
never zero. Um, but yeah, so I'm inspired to make this thing because like I know I'm gonna have leftover yarn. So
Mhm,
it's like, well, what do you do? Oh, you make a blanket, and then it's holding the blanket, and then it's representative of the thing that my kids have for
mhm.
somebody else's kid, and I think that's really cute.
That's a lovely gift. And you know what? This is what I mean. Like what you chose to make says so much about you and like your life experiences. The fact that you're a mum, the fact that you know your kid loved this to the point that you know, had to become a lifeguard for the
I ju
blanket.
I nearly slipped getting out of the river. My life flashed before my eyes for a hot second. But also, it's just like I've seen Toy Story. I've seen
Mhm,
Toy Story 2 and 3.
mhm.
I can't in good consciousness, knowing how much it means to my child, and also maybe part of my brain believing that toys do have feelings, let this stuffy sail down a river.
Yeah, well, and especially because you know the toys will talk. They'll
Exactly.
say, they'll say,
Mhm.
she let Dumbo Blanket drown.
Yeah.
She watched Cold Hearted and let it drown. And
I
you can't let them know that about you.
No, I
They'll rebel.
I'm the fun mom. Like, I'm the one that's
I'm
just
not a regular mom. I'm a cool mom.
I'm a cool mom specifically to the toys. I'm the one that picks them up and dusts them off when they fall down the side of the bed and, like, puts them lovingly back on the bedspread, you
Aw,
know?
exactly.
Like,
You would
so
never let Dumbo drown.
I would never let Dumbo drown, and that's about as much as we can say before Disney comes and tries to sue Euphoria. So moving on. Moving, swiftly on. Um, okay. We have a lot of time left, so we can do something that I've not really been able to talk about much before.
Oh, okay.
But it's the season finale, and I can do what I want. Um, if you had to make an arts and crafts themed TTRPG or show, like an actual play show,
Mhm.
what system would you use, and what story would you tell?
Oh my gosh. That's such a good question.
It is. It's a great question. I only ask good ones. Sometimes silly ones because I wasn't paying attention and I have a goldfish brain. But when I think about it, I can ask really fantastic questions.
Yeah, see, when I need time to think, when you need time to think, people, compliment the person you're talking to. Flatter them to buy yourself some time. It always works every time. But also it was a genuinely true compliment.
Oh, thank you. It's
Despite my
okay.
machinations. I see when you ask a question like that, then immediately my brain starts going, what if I made a crafts arts and crafts system?
This is why we're here. Go. Start
Yeah,
pitching.
so I'm imagining like a random table, like you roll on a table, and that's like what craft your characters using. And I feel like you would have to kind of describe how your particular craft helps you in that situation.
Mhm.
And I'm using the word like craft specifically here because I think that there's sometimes a little bit of a I don't know, a little bit of a false debate around like, oh, this is an art and this is a craft, and that calling something
Mhm.
a craft is devaluing it. But to me, like they can be one and the same.
Mhm.
Um, like if my art, like as an actor, if my art is like the play or the performance, then my craft is like my characterization and the way that I deliver my lines and the way that I react to the other characters in the scene, all of that stuff. The craft is what creates the art. I don't think that they're different things necessarily. Um, so I feel like there could be something fun in there in my imaginary system that I'm making up on the fly
Nice,
about
nice.
kind of you're making your craft roles and describing like what you're doing and how your discipline is like developing something until you're creating your piece of art, which is ultimately like your end goal. Um, and you and your other characters who are random rolled what their craft is are kind of creating some kind of mixed media piece between all of your different disciplines to create something beautiful at the end of it, or something silly, or something ugly. You know what? Art doesn't have to be beautiful; it can be ugly. I invite you to draw a picture and then rip it in half and then sellotape it back together, if that brings you joy. Um, there you go.
That's
That would be
oddly
the kind of
specific. Do we wanna get into that on stream or
look, my drawings are very bad, so I wouldn't feel precious about ripping them in half and sellotaping them back together. Maybe that will make it more interesting.
Oh.
Um, but yeah, no, I think that is kind of that is what I would want to do. I'd want to make my own system because you've given me a spark of an idea. I'm going to write it down now. I wrote a little tiny game in my lunch break today because my brain was firing
Oh,
off.
nice.
So that if you found my itch page, like look out for that appearing probably once I have time to actually write it up rather than just writing it in my brain. And next up, crafting TTRPG system. It's gonna happen.
Oh,
um
no.
but I think that the thing that you said about like what kind of story would you tell, the thing I love
Mhm,
about TTRPGs is you can really tell any kind of story.
mhm,
um Maybe certain systems lend themselves to different types of play, different types of players, different types of story structures. But I think ultimately, like if you have like a story in your heart, a tale to tell, a character who has a journey to go on, you'll find a way for that to happen, no matter what the framework and structure around you is.
mhm. No, I fully get that. I do like the idea of, like, making a system,
Hmm.
like, f to tell specifically, like, craft-related stories. Like, because 'cause you've got things that aren't TTRPGs, but are, like, I guess, like, interactive art experiences. I'm thinking of, like, Wreck This Deck and, like, Wreck This Journal, and
Mm-hmm,
that
hmm.
kind of thing, which is, like it's almost a game when you think about it because it's, like, this fun, like, emotional exploration of, like, making something and destroying it and, like, all of this stuff. Um, and it just I couldn't tell you why, it just feels like play to me, like those kind of things. Um,
Absolutely.
so you've got that kind of thing, and then there is a game, a TTRPG, a solo game, but instead of journaling, you do needlepoint, like you do like embroidery to like kind of like tell your story. I can't remember for the life of me what it's called, Everyone go follow like Finley, Jinley on Blue Sky, because I know that they have spoken about this game before. Um, it's not their game, but they have played it and enjoyed it and talk about it a lot. But so you're kind of starting to get TTRPGs that kind of are using like crafts as like mechanic.
Mhm.
So my brain goes, is there a way to incorporate like actual crafting, so like for us crochet
Mm.
as like a game mechanic somewhere, something like you get like like you can get like the yarn that's different colors like your jumper,
Mhm.
and like instead of like doing like a roll, it's the color that you're on for the section that you're on, tells you whether like what the
Mm.
outcome is, kind of thing.
Like
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 something.
you want some self-striping sock yarn and just
Yeah,
see
yeah,
what
yeah.
stripe you're on. Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. So it's just like you're expected to craft as you role play, and then you'll stop. And then it's just like, okay, if it is like red, green, yellow, whatever, like that tells you whether it's like a positive outcome, like a positive with like one negative, like a negative with like one positive, or like a you've really messed up here. Like that kind of thing.
I think that's really cute. I also feel like there's something in what you said about like the act of creation as being an act of play in and of itself. And
Hmm.
I kind of love the idea of like I don't know how this would work. I love the idea of like you have like your problem, your thing that your character must act on, and somehow like
Hmm.
you must create physically to solve this problem. You know? Like
Oh, Michelle, I just had an idea.
oh go. Go.
Okay, hear me out. You are playing as the matriarch of a family, um, and as you're creating something that is representative of your family tree and your family dynamics. And the thing that
Mm.
you're trying to solve, the thing that you're trying to fix, that problem, is ruptured dynamics within the family. And so you're literally having to create something to mend the bonds in your own family. And how that goes depends on like what you create and like that kind of thing.
I love that. That's making me think of quilting. But it, it
Yeah.
it could totally be like it could be crochet. It could be that if it's a game you play with others that you add something and then you pass it on to the next person
Oh my
so
god.
that you're creating, something that's a collage at the end of it.
Oh
And
no,
you've
that's actually sick. That's such a good idea.
right? Um, oh my gosh, yes, scrapbooking, patchwork quilt, like, it could be
Yeah.
so many things. It could be a piece of paper, like those, the little game you play when you're a kid where you draw the head and then fold it over and then you draw the body, right? Kind
Yeah,
of
yeah,
like
yeah.
that, but, like, you're adding to a picture. It could be any kind of art, any kind of crafting that you could do to, like, create something that this is this family dynamic coming back together.
I really like the idea. Like, so this is so niche. This is so niche, right? Okay. Like, say like you are like a group of like four people, you're playing different members of a family and you're
Mhm.
crocheting like a blanket together. I love the idea of like, yes, you can add to it. You can do the next couple of stitches, and that has a consequence in game. But also, what if you incorporated frogging as a mechanic, undoing something, taking something back?
Oh my gosh, yes. I love
Like,
that.
oh, you're the perfect person to have on to like have this specific question come up. Uh,
Well,
like,
thank you.
I feel like this idea of like something quirky and not quite what you expect from a TTRPG fits in with like your design portfolio so far.
Mhm, mhm.
You know, but yeah, no. Anyway, that's where my brain's at.
I love that. I love the idea that, like, co-creation can be adding to something, but it can also be taking something away or reimagining something, and
Hmm.
that, like, to take away is not to be kind of quote unquote destructive is not necessarily, antithetical to creation of art together.
Oh,
Um
100%.
and when you're co-creating, like sometimes there are ideas that you have to say that's not going to work for XYZ reason, or this doesn't quite fit into this artistic vision.
Mhm.
And I feel like there's something really interesting to explore in that, the idea that you could like take the piece and then you might undo something someone else has done, and like
Mhm.
the emotions side up in that. It's bringing it back to what you were talking about, with like production side of things and like the artistic elements of that. Like sometimes there are ideas that you think are great but aren't going to work right now, or sometimes there are things you want to do but it's like, oh no, there's only so many hours in the day and I need to sleep occasionally, damn.
Wait,
maybe
we're
maybe
supposed to be
this
sleeping?
occasionally,
Okay, as
if
long as
if
it's
it
only
comes to it.
occasionally,
As
like
only occasionally. I'm not going to take away your fun. But sometimes there's things that have to be reworked or taken away in order to make the overall thing that you're creating work.
Mhm.
And I think there's something really nice about celebrating that aspect of the art of creation and saying it's not just adding, it can sometimes be taking away or editing. I mean, certainly my writing, I spend a lot more time editing than I do actually putting the words down on the page in the first place. So,
Yeah, but I think that's something about like TTRPG and any kind of like written design that people don't necessarily understand is
mhm,
that like you can't edit an empty page. Like you can't refine an idea if it doesn't exist.
mhm.
And sometimes the most important thing you can do is put words down on paper. Like if you see my draft zeros, the amount of swear words in that draft zeros, and then just like like the square brackets and then all caps and then whatever the idea is without it
Yes.
being finished. Like my draft zeros are a mess. But like
Mhm.
once that idea exists, I can then go in, I can refine it, I can make it what it needs to be so that way people understand what I'm trying to say with all of those F bombs and square brackets.
Yeah, totally. You're totally right in chat. One, make it exist. Two, make it good. That is
Exactly.
exactly my process. Yeah, I'm working on a monologue at the moment, for a new writing festival in Yorkshire. I'm
Ooh.
very excited about it. They commissioned me. Your girl's a professional playwright these days. It's very exciting.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm very excited about it. But yeah, I wrote a first draft and I sent it to the literary manager at the theatre company, and I was like, "This is really more of just like all of my feelings about what I want to say, just kind of vomited onto a page. Like it's barely a monologue. It has no structure. It has no character. It's just like a bunch of ideas, like
Mhm.
just spilling out onto a few sides of A4." And then I wrote a second draft, which was probably one of the worst things I've ever written in my life. It was dreadful. But I needed to do that. I needed to write down all my bad ideas to get them out of my brain to make space for the good stuff, right?
Mhm.
So then I wrote a third draft that I'm pretty happy with because so much of creating the good art was to write down the placeholders, to be like, um what do I want to make the audience feel right now? I want them to feel this. So I'm just gonna write in brackets, write something to make this point, close brackets, and come back to it, right?
That's all you need, baby.
Yeah, maybe I just need to like highlight a whole paragraph and delete the whole thing because I'm like that
Mhm.
direction is a dead end. Um
Yeah.
and yeah, I feel like it's sometimes in TTRPGs. I'm kind of I'm going off on one now. Follow me, bear
I'm
with
with
me.
you. I'm literally one step behind you, holding your hand. Let's go.
Sometimes as GMs, I think we can become very concerned about like every single thread being pulled and leading somewhere. Like every single character concept that like one of your players has brought in has to be somehow incorporated into the larger narrative. Like everything that you've laid down has to be picked up. Um, and I think that like sometimes the act of GMing is the act of editing, where you kind of throw a bunch of stuff at the wall and see what sticks. And like, don't stress yourself if like some plot ideas get dropped, or you come up with a cool idea and then your players just like aren't living for it. Um, and they just like don't pick up on it and it gets abandoned. Like that's part of the act of creation is finding the stuff that's working and the stuff that's vibing.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that like certainly for me when I was starting off like GMing at first, I became very um like down on myself if I came up with stuff that didn't resonate and would kind of be like, "Oh, I didn't do a good job." And it's like, "No, that's part of it. That's part of making something is finding the stuff that works, and part of finding the stuff that works is finding the stuff that doesn't."
Yeah.
Um I feel like TTRPGs are such like a fun space to explore creation and kind of making a mess or making something that doesn't work because the game continues and you just roll some more dice or pass on the quilt that you're making together as part of your game and see what happens next. And maybe you undo it. That's fine too.
No, yeah, 100%. Wow, we're getting deep. I'm gonna have to
So
bring
deep.
it back. Hang on. Let's find something
Pull the
silly.
handbrake, turn this boat around. She's taken us
Uh,
on too much of a tangent.
Look, we will go wherever my brain decides because Darcy and I were foolish enough to be like, yes, Taylor, you have full control over like what you say and your guests and the topics. And I was like, are you sure? And they were like, of course, we trust you. And now we're here, 4 episodes into the pilot season, where we just talking about making things. And I
Just
think
talking about making stuff, and it's
we're just
great.
about making stuff,
I
you
got too
know?
excited and I did half a row of half double crochets. I'm meant to be doing single crochets on this round.
Oh
This
no.
it's all right. I just pulled it. It's undone. It's part of the
Okay,
creation process.
right. I think again, you know what? This you think that this is a TTRPG interview show and it doesn't have a character arc, but it does. It's my personal character arc. I came out of the gate on episode 1, which is like what about like a month ago?
Probably.
Yes, I'm doing it
Maybe longer
every
than that
no, what
actually.
longer 2 months because this is like every other week. 6
Yeah.
weeks. 6 weeks. I what is time is irrelevant. I refuse to be called out
It's
by the
an
chat.
illusion.
Time is whatever we make it. I came out of the gate episode 1 saying, I don't frock my work. We just adapt and we move on. Um
Are you gonna make a
and
confession now?
I over the past 6 weeks, I have slowly, off camera most of the time, I've been frocking things where I've messed up whilst I've been talking to my guests. And so I'm being called a hypocrite by my producer and first guest, JC Darcy. However, I think this is character growth. And this is my character arc for the season. So what catch me on season 2 of spinning the yarn where I actually start weaving in my ends. JK, I'll never do that. I'll rather die than weave in my ends. But anyway,
What do you do with your ends, Taylor?
what do you mean what do I do with my ends?
What if you don't weave them in? Where do they go?
Um, this is a very good question. I don't think you're gonna like the answer.
I'm so upset. I'm
So,
pointing the microphone directly into your face, but I'm also wishing that I could somehow stop myself.
so I've just done like a magic ring, and
Uh-huh.
then so I have crocheted the end in. And if I can get away with that, I will crochet the end in. And
Honestly, I'm not mad at that.
if I can't get away with that, I kind of just use the hook to kind of like loop it through the next stitch and then leave it.
That's a crime. Congratulations for confessing live on the internet to being an
Well,
actual
sometimes I
criminal.
don't even bother doing that. So,
No!
um,
Unacceptable.
well,
However,
it's how I craft, and you know what? You
okay,
can't judge me for that because I refuse to be judged. So,
chat, if any of you end up on season 2, your mission is to lead us towards the character arc where Taylor begins weaving in ends. I believe in us.
yeah, thank you. It's really not gonna happen. I'll find another hot take to drop in episode 1 and have changed my mind on by episode whatever. Oh yeah, chat, season 2 is gonna be longer than 4 episodes. I've been greenlit for like many. I don't know how many, but
Many.
more than 4. So I'm getting Darcy is putting up a bunch of fingers. One of them is the middle one.
That's just a
Um,
middle finger. That's not
yeah,
helpful,
I
Darcy.
think I've only been
But I
doing it
approve.
for 1 episode next season, everybody. Anyway, we're getting off track. This isn't about me. This is about Michelle. Michelle,
I've heard of her.
have you ever like so I know none of your characters like do a craft.
Hmm.
Have you ever made something that's like symbolic of a character or that like your character would wear or like that your character had? Like anything like
I
that?
I make things that my characters would make. I For example, I I played a character in a home game for a while who was trying to. She was very into like it was a space game, so it was like space social media, like future fantasy social media, and she was trying to throw off the people who are pursuing us by creating a fake viral social media storyline of where we actually were. So I spent a lot of time like I was like making in character like space Twitter posts and space Instagram posts and like creating the social media story of what she was doing. And like making memes and stuff about the game. Um our
Memes are an
producer
art form, yeah.
our producer knows that if my character is somebody who is more of like a storyteller or a bard, sometimes I write poetry or like write stories out in character that like the character has made. Um, so I do a lot of that stuff. I really like to get creative and like as a way to get to know my characters.
Mhm.
And that's like generally not for anyone other than myself and my own amusement. Um, I've never crocheted in character though, so if I make my character who crochets, maybe I'll have to see what they would make. Um, but yeah, what else have I done? I've written like diary entries, and like sometimes instead of making like traditional notes for a session, I'll like write it as if the character's written down their own notes, like in
Oh,
character notes.
wow, that's cool. I love that.
Yeah, I find that quite fun. Kind of like remembering not necessarily what what am I trying to say? Like not what went down like in a very clinical way, but rather like the character's perception or memories or like interpretation of what went down. I think can
Mhm.
be interesting for like exploring where that character's going to go next. So I'll do that as well. Have you ever made
Amazing.
anything as a character? I'm
Yeah.
curious.
Yes.
Bouncing it
Okay.
back.
So, um, we had we did a skyship D&D campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and long story short, we got attacked by snowboarding sky pirates.
Hate when that
Um,
happens.
uh, it was a whole thing. We killed their captain, and then we were like, "If any of you want to join our crew, you can."
Mm.
And their pilot, their helmsman, was a goblin named Bizzle, and Bizzle was a nudist. And so during lockdown, um, I had a bunch of felt and I made Bizzle junk and all, and gave that to my DM after lockdown was over. uh, it was like a 2D like felt plushy kind of situation, but I was so bored. I was so bored.
Oh
But
no,
yeah,
Bizzle.
I have actually, and I haven't confessed that yet because no, we've not had the opportunity. So
It's me
that's
playing the Uno reverse on you. You're supposed to be interviewing me, but I want to know. I want to know
yeah.
about Bizzle and his junk. I demand photos of Bizzle,
uh,
evidence of
I
Bizzle. You're gonna
I
Discord them to me later.
I'll send them to you on Discord later.
Heck
You know what?
yeah.
No, even better. Um, Euphoria has a Discord. Euphoria has a Discord and a Patreon. So
Mm.
if you join the Patreon for Euphoria at the appropriate tier, you will get the pictures of Bizzle. And I will
Incredible.
email those over tonight so you can upload them to the
Heck
Patreon. I
yeah.
said it.
I'm
I was
I'm
gonna be like, join the Euphoria Discord. I'll put them in the crafting corner. But then the producer was like Patreon, and I was like, okay, you know
right.
what?
The voice of God
The voice of
says that we have to paywall it because Darcy wants to make money off of Bizzle's junk. That's what Darcy just said, and you can't prove otherwise.
no,
And
there's no
so
record of
there you
anything
go.
else that was said.
I manage the Patreon. I will put that on Patreon for you, dear
Thank you,
dear
Michelle.
audience. It's happening.
Okay, and
Darcy
on
can't
that
stop me.
Darcy can't stop you. And on that note, we've hit our time.
Oh wow.
So Michelle, thank you so much for joining me on Spinning the Yarn. Would you like to tell everyone where they can find you?
Yeah, you can find me at Michelle Copter on some of the social medias. you'll have to just try and find out. You can find me on Itch at Michelle Helicopter because I've started writing little teeny games now, and I've got another one hopefully coming out soon. You can find me in Euphoria places because this is where I live now. That's
Mhm.
right. Thank you so much for having me, Taylor. This has been so nice.
It's
So
been
fun.
so lovely having you. Thank you so much for coming on my show. Hey everyone, I'm Taylor Navarro. I have been Taylor Navarro, and I think I'm going to be Taylor Navarro for a little while longer, TBD. But you can find me at Taylor Ann NX on Blue Sky. You can find me over on Moonbeam, which is a new streaming platform that is opening for an open beta very soon. You can also find Euphoria over there eventually, very soon. The realm exists. So go get a head start on that if you can. And you'll also find me obviously here at Euphoria, doing stuff mostly behind the scenes, and you'll see me again. This is so long, but not for long, because season two is coming. And it's coming sooner than you think. But if you want to know exactly when, make sure you sign up to the Patreon, join the Discord, and follow us on the socials down below. Thank you so much for crafting with us, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.